Please turn your video setting off if possible. There is a function at the bottom of your Zoom screen to turn that setting off. It can be distracting, but if can't really stop you too much if you leave it on, but would appreciate if you did turn it off. And finally, if you do have questions, please submit them through the Zoom group chat function. You can message me directly, or you can feel free to message everyone so that we can all see your question. We'll get started. Let's give folks maybe another minute or two. All right, I think we have a good number of folks on the call. I will get us started. Again, this session is being recorded and will be made available to you and to the public no later than Monday. Please mute yourself and turn off your video setting if possible. If you have questions, please submit them through the chat function. We will try to answer your questions during the questions section at the end of our session. In the interest of time, we will go through our presentation first because we do have quite a bit of material to go through, but we've made sure to have time at the end to take questions. We will be posting all of the questions and our responses to our website no later than July 1st. And we will do our best to post questions and answers from this webinar well before July 1st. So we'll try to send those out to you shortly after this session. So with that, we will get started. So this is the info session for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Consultant Request for Proposals. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Andrea Aboletta, and I am the Contract Operations and Purchasing Manager at First 5 LA. I am the contracting staff overseeing this RFP, and I'm joined by my other two colleagues in our HR department, who I will invite right now to just say hello and give some quick introductions.
Hi, my name is Gala Collins. I'm the director at First 5 LA, and I want to welcome you all. Thank you so much for participating.
And my name is Bob Denaire. I'm part of the HR staff, been there 5.5 years. And I too would like to welcome everybody to today's session.
And perfect timing. I feel like my landscapers just started, so I apologize for any background noise on my end. And I wanted to mention we have another staff person who's on our info session today. Her name is Marilu Guzman. You won't be hearing her voice, but she is helping us navigate. Just wanted to let you know that she is also on this session. So before I pass it off actually to Bob and Gala, I will give you a quick overview of the agenda for the next hour. Bob and Gala will give you an overview of First 5 LA and who we are, and they'll talk about the project overview, give you a sense of where we are on our DEI work and our journey up until today as a staff. They'll also give you a brief overview of the scope of work for the work that is coming up. And then I will talk about the nuts and bolts of submitting an application for this RFP. So with that, I will pass it on to Bob and Gala to get us started.
Thank you. So let's start by talking about who we are and what we do. So First 5 LA is the state's largest early childhood funder and advocacy organization created in 1998 by California voters to invest Proposition 10 tobacco tax revenue in Los Angeles County. So where we want to begin really is with our North Star. And so our North Star is basically by 2028, all children in LA County enter kindergarten ready to succeed in school and life. But how do we get there? So we have a visual that explains how we will reach our North Star. And basically, this pathway is our strategic plan on a page. So we begin with our North Star, and then we go to, what does that mean? What are the results for children and families that we want to see? We want families to optimize their child's development. We want children to receive early developmental supports and services. We want to make sure that children are safe from abuse, neglect, and other trauma. And we want children to have a high quality early care and education experience. So what is First 5's role in improving systems? We want systems to be accessible, quality, aligned, and sustainable. And how are we going to do that? We are going to change systems by policy change, practice change, and will building. And then we also have our strategic priorities. We have 4 strategic priorities. We want to strengthen public and community systems, advance and build on community experience, expand influence and impact with data, and optimize our effectiveness. That is basically what we will focus our work on in the next 8 years in order to reach the results that lead to our North Star. Now, our 4 strategic priorities, under that, we have 20 objectives that basically explain how we will implement the strategic priorities. And foundational to everything is our values and our investment guidelines. So these are our values. And before we get to that, I just wanted to mention that since our inception, we have had a long-standing commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And most recently, First 5 LA and its board leadership formally adopted DEI as a First 5 LA value and investment guideline to guide and inform board and staff decision-making as part of First 5 LA's 2020-2028 strategic plan, which was approved by the board in November of 2019. So we really ground our work in our values. They act as our guiding principles for how we do our work, the culture we aim to promote, and a benchmark to measure behaviors and performance. So our values are collaboration, integrity, learning, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Then we have our investment guidelines. These are refined 2019 investment guidelines, continue to serve as criteria for decision making for all major components of the strategic planning process and as ongoing policy guidance for board and staff. There are investment guidelines of equity, sustainability, partnership, prevention, system change, and evidence and innovation. Because of our limited time, I will only highlight the equity piece. So the refined 2019 guidelines explicitly prioritize adopting an equity lens throughout our work. So what this means for our work is that we will use data to elevate disparities and achieve equitable outcomes, strengthen existing public systems to be child and family centered, and incorporate voice of families and communities in system change. So we've always been proud that First 5 LA hires a broad, talented, and diverse team of employees, and we feel our demographics support that diversity. Currently, we have 118 employees, 69% are female, 31% are male, and the average tenure here at First 5 LA is 5.6 years. We have more millennials at 47% than Generation X at 44%, and we actually just recently hired our first Generation Z employee. This is an overview of race ethnicity by level at First 5 LA. As you can see, while we do have some work to do in the executive level, but when you look across our organization at staff, manager, and director level, you do see that we do have a lot of diversity. Now let's take a look at how we compare with LA County. So here, as you can see, we do represent LA County. Now I will turn it over to Bob to walk us through our DEI journey.
Thank you, Gala. And one of the first things we want to do is to provide a really high-level overview of our DEI journey. And one of the first things we did is we asked Dr. Bryant Marks, who is the founder of the National Training Institute on Race and Equality, to provide a 2-day workshop on implicit bias for the entire organization at First 5 LA. And we are continuing to send new employees to Dr. Marks's workshop. We also are working with the Management Center in a couple of areas. One is we have managers and above going through their 2-day class with a very long title. It's called Managing to Change the World, the Nonprofit Manager's Guide to Getting Results. And they do have a lot of DEI elements discussed and presented in that class. And then we scheduled their companion piece to this, once again through the Management Center, called Managing for Racial Equality, Inclusion, and Results. And unfortunately, we had to postpone that class because of this little thing called COVID-19. And we are continuing to send new managers to Managing to Change the World. And once we launch and move forward with Managing for Racial Equality, Inclusion, and Results, we will continue to send new employees to that class as well. And one of the other things we did is we provided our VPs and directors with a series of questions to help prompt discussion and to get input from staff how they think we should be moving forward with implicit bias in DEI. DEI is foundational to our strategic plan. And as Gala had just mentioned when she was walking you through our pathway for systems change, she showed you how DEI is embedded in our values, in our investment guideline, and we made equity a critical success factor. And we also have a lot of staff engagement during our journey as well. We had a DEI work group who, among other things, helped craft and refine our organizational-wide values, including DEI. With our strategy priority number 4, directors, along with input from staff, are leading this work group task with accelerating our work to foster our organizational values with an initial emphasis on DEI. And we're continuing the conversation on a much broader level at our next all-staff meeting, which happens to be next week, where we're beginning an important conversation about advancing our strategic plan objective of fostering a culture that reflects our values. And where we're going to begin is with our values of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And lastly, we have also created principles that help guide us specifically with our work in fostering a culture that embodies our values of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one of the things we learned very early on is that DEI is not owned by HR. And it's really at the level of the executive director and what we call OWL, which is our organizational-wide leadership team, as well as every member of First 5LA. So that was a really brief overview of who we are, what we do, our values, our investment guidelines, and our DEI journey, and basically how we got to where we are now. Now let's shift gears and provide a project overview, and then we'll talk a little bit about the scope of work. We're seeking the services of a consultant, and it could be an individual or a firm, to design and implement a comprehensive work plan to inform how we can best approach diversity, equity, and inclusion, including implicit bias, in our internal policies and practices. Now, while the focus is on our internal policies and practices, the work plan may help inform our programmatic strategies as well. And we could advance the slide, by the way. There we go, and one more, since we just talked about it. Now, we're looking for someone who really has the proven expertise and demonstrated hands-on experience guiding nonprofit or government agencies through the implementation and successful completion of an organizational-wide DEI transformation. Now, let's talk about the scope of work. The short term is basically to conduct an analysis and develop a baseline assessment report of where we are organizationally, our practices and level of DEI awareness and competency, and to identify priorities to further strengthen DEI capacity to shape and execute the First 5LA operations. And we need someone to provide insight and knowledge of what are the DEI best practices in the field? And once again, with a particular focus on nonprofit and government agencies. We also want to develop a shared language and framework, sort of a statement of principle, if you will. And we want to develop prioritized recommendations for the first 2 years. Basically, where and how do we start our DEI journey? And then looking at the longer term, sort of what we're calling phase 2, this is really taking a look at support development of an organization-wide commitment and infrastructure to sustain our DEI strategy. How do we keep it moving? How do we keep it moving forward for the long term? The second part of this is now developing a training strategy to increase staff DEI competencies, skills, and capacity that support implementation and also supporting the implementation of the strategies that are developed under this section. And lastly, develop a strategy, a roadmap, if you will, that includes methods of long-term monitoring and evaluations that really considers several things. So it's not everything that we have listed here, but these are the types of things that we're looking at: policies and procedures, community partnership, engagements, ongoing staff education. And the consultants will also support implementation of the strategies that are developed. So that's a really broad overview of the project and the scope. And now I'm going to turn it over to Andrea to talk about the process, the application process.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Gala. Again, feel free to ask questions in the Zoom chat, and we will get to those at the very end. We're making pretty good time, so I think we will have more than enough time to answer some questions if they come in. So I'm actually going to go into the actual application process. Just so you know that there is an eligibility requirement in order to be eligible to apply for the RFP. So we're looking for a minimum of 3 years of experience in developing and executing organization-wide DEI assessment, planning, and implementation efforts. Some of our desired and preferred qualities we're looking for: someone, an individual or firm, that has demonstrated experience in working with all levels of management and staff. A preference for an individual or firm who is based in California, Southern California. This is open to firms and individuals outside of California, but we really are looking for someone that has either the consultants or office that is based in Southern California. And then finally, someone with demonstrated hands-on experience in doing this work with nonprofits and or government agencies to implement an organization-wide DEI learning and transformation. The terms of the project: so we expect to enter into a 1-year contract with an anticipated start date of August 31st. The project may be up to 2 years, and we anticipate it will. So we will renew the contract at the end of the initial term. This is expected to be a time and materials based contract. Once we do award a contractor, we go into contract negotiations, but we do anticipate to pay the selected contractor on an hourly basis. The scope of work and budget, again, yes, will be negotiated after we've selected the contractor. We presented to you what the initial scope of work looks like, but again, that is subject to negotiation once we select our contractor, so we can really firm up what the work will look like over the next year. And again, this will be paid on an hourly basis. The application, so I'll take you through the required elements of the application. The application must be submitted online on our website. If you haven't done so already, I encourage you to go onto our website, and you'll actually need to register to create an account before being able to access the application. Just so you know, the application, you don't need to type in your answers into the form on the website. You're just going to need to attach these required elements as part of the application process. I think that'll be a little bit easier. I won't go into detail for each prompt for this section, but I'll talk about a couple of things for each. So for the proposed work plan, here you're going to talk about your general approach, tools, and strategies on how you will carry out the scope of work. We are open to different approaches to this work than what is stated in the scope of work. And you will have the opportunity to present a different approach in the application, if so. There is a 15-page limit to this section. You are free to use all 15 pages, but I would say do not feel the need to fill up the entire 15 pages in order to reach the max. If you feel like you can provide a comprehensive prompt in 7 pages, you know, please do so, but don't feel obligated to fill up that 15 pages with information. And similarly for qualifications, staffing, and the subcontracting section. We do ask for a copy of resumes. There is no page limit for resumes. So these, again, we do ask that you provide resumes for any key personnel that you will assign to this project. The budget and pricing, that's pretty straightforward. We're going to ask you to provide hourly rates and as well as a narrative to justify the costs. This is a 3-page max, and that should be enough space to provide your budget proposal. And we do ask for references, up to 3 references that we can contact during our review process. And finally, we ask for our litigation and contract compliance form. This is actually a form that we require all contractors to complete as part of all our RFP processes. The form is actually located and available for download on our website. And if you do have a business license, we do ask that you upload that as well. It looks like there's some questions coming in, and I'll try and get to these at the end. It looks like I should be able to, but thank you for sending those in, and we'll get those answered during our Q&A section. There are 3 levels of review as part of the RFP. The first level of review is a check to make sure that all required documents have been submitted, that you've answered all the prompts, and that you meet our eligibility requirements. After that initial vetting, all eligible applicants will be reviewed by our panel of reviewers using the score sheet that is posted with the RFP on our website. And finally, we move forward the top scoring applicants for an interview round. The interview round is typically held in person. However, we are a remote organization for the time being, and it is likely that this will be held via teleconference. But if for some reason it is being held in person, we will let you know if that's possible. And then finally, we complete our interview processes with reference checks that will complement our final recommendation. All right, I won't read this page word for word. I'll kind of just highlight each bullet. So some things to remember. Please ensure that your documents are complete before submitting an application. Any missing documents or omissions may make your application disqualified. We do adhere strictly to our page limits. So anything beyond the page limit will be removed from the application before our reviewers review it during level 2 review. Applications received after the deadline will not be considered. We are very strict with our deadline, which I believe is July 7th at 5 p.m. So sometimes, you know, folks will not realize that it is a 5 p.m. deadline. So just be aware that we do turn off the application at 5 p.m. Applicants should not wait to submit documents at the last minute. We really do ask that you not wait till the last day to, you know, create an account. Try to do that as early as possible. We are not responsible for any technical issues or internet connections. So if you're creating your account for the first time, 10 minutes before the deadline, please try your best to avoid doing that. And next, we are not liable for any costs incurred in preparing the application. And just know that any cover letters, resumes, and any attached materials really submitted to the RFP are subject to a public records request. So if there is information that you want marked confidential, please do so. And the terms of the RFP posted online talk a little bit more in detail about this. There may be at some point that we amend the solicitation by written addendum. Please check our website often just to ensure that you're catching any changes to the solicitation. It is your responsibility to make sure that you do check the website before submitting your application and that it incorporates any recent changes to the RFP. We have provided a checklist to help you in completing the application, and hopefully that is helpful to you. I just wanted to show you where we are in the timeline. So again, the RFP was released on June 5th. We are here on June 18th doing the info session. You will have until June 30th to submit questions to this RFP, and then we will post all questions the following day. Questions that come up on this session, again, we'll try to answer them on today's meeting. If not, we will get back to you before June 30th. But we will post all questions submitted no later than June 30th. Our proposals are due to First 5 on our website by July 7th at 5 p.m. We anticipate holding interviews, so level 3 interviews on July 28th and 29th, with hopefully selecting a contractor by August 5th. Depending on what the contract amount is negotiated between whoever we select, it's possible that because of our thresholds for contracting, the contract may be needed to, we may need to present this contract to our Board of Commissioners for approval. If not, then we anticipate a contract start date of August 31st. All right, so just do a quick chime check. Okay, so it's 2:30. So let's take a look at some of these questions. Mary Lou, do you want to kind of shout out a few of them?
So our first question is from Karen. She asks if the slides will be made available after today's info session.
Yes, we'll send you the slides, and the recording of the recording will be made available by Monday on our website.
Great. Our next question is from Shanae. She asks, will supplier diversity programs experience with a diversity and inclusion lens be part of the DEI qualifications?
Supplier diversity programs experience. And will not, so we will be using the review tool as our criteria or scoring sheet for reviewing applications for level 2 review.
Our next question is from Carla. Carla has 3 questions. The first question is, when you state individual or group, do you mean the organization has to have 3 years of experience, or will the experience level of the individuals within the organization suffice?
So I will say that if you're applying as an individual, so if you're the principal, that you'll have to have at least 3 years of experience. So it's not cumulative of individuals that make up the organization.
And the next question is, what is the maximum amount of funds allotted per organization? Is there a specific pot?
Per organization. So we didn't provide a budget amount for this project. It is subject to negotiation. So we don't have a stated max or minimum, in fact. So unfortunately at this time, we don't have an anticipated contract amount, but we are open to the budget proposals that do come in.
And then an additional question from Carla. How many grants, I'm guessing awards is what they're referring to. How
Yeah.
many grants will be approved, one organization or multiple organizations doing the work?
This will be we're looking for one contractor to do the work.
Next question is from Pavi. Are there any considerations or organizational impacts based on the current national uprisings and focused on addressing anti-Black racism that are helpful to keep in mind as we draft a plan?
I'll ask Bob and Gala to answer this, but I will say we wrote the RFP before the civil unrest. It was, we've been working on this for quite a while, and I think with the backdrop of what's happening in all across the country, that the work is top of mind, I think, for not just leadership, but all staff. I think, we do go by the stated review tool. So we do have to adhere to the criteria that has been included, that's been posted on the website.
Thank you. Our next question is from Karen. Will bio suffice for the resume section? And that's in reference to the required documents.
Yes, bios should be fine.
Is there an org chart for First 5 LA available on our website? I'm especially curious about any bodies that exist beyond the board or staff. For instance, is there a place we can look to learn about current public engagement mechanisms and current org partners?
Yes, so we do have an org chart. I don't believe it is available on our website. I would have to follow up to see if we can provide that. In terms of, I'm curious about any bodies that exist beyond the board or staff, for instance. So I think the question is, who are our current partners in our work, our contractors, vendors, and our programmatic partners? I believe that's the question. I will have to get back to you on that if we can provide that in a timely manner. We do have, I believe on our website, we do provide a listing of who we partner with, but I'm not certain.
The next question is, what metrics does First 5 LA currently use to evaluate DEI policies and practices? Do these already exist, or are they expected to be created during this contract?
I'll let Gala and Bob answer that question.
Yeah, we expect that to be created in this contract.
Next question is, what is the proposed budget for the one-year engagement period?
Yeah, unfortunately, again, we don't have an anticipated budget for the first year. It is subject to negotiations, and Gala, if you want to chime in too, feel free. We are open again to the budget proposals that are submitted. It is expected to be a time and materials contract, but may negotiate perhaps a blended contract for deliverables based or hourly.
So I'm skipping one question because we have another similar question to budget. Is there a range we can see for the budget so we can stay within scope in the pricing section of the proposals we submit?
Yeah, again, there's no budget range. I know this is a tough question because we don't provide one, but I will say, based on the scope of work, I would say, provide your best estimate. I think we're going into this work not as experts, and we've tried to do our research, and so trying to put a number out there wasn't ideal for us because we really don't know what the work is going to cost.
Next question is, what, if any, data have you already collected from the DEI trainings and workshops that have been conducted? What is the budget range for this project? And I believe that second question we've already addressed, but if we can address the question about data we already have collected.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, we have limited data that we've collected when we do those trainings.
Thank you. The next question is, what is the current decision-making model for First 5LA, and will that be up for revival? Often that is at the root of issues around DEI.
Gala, do you want to take a stab at this question?
Well, we have not put together our review panel, but it will be from all levels of the organization.
Oh, I think the question might be, is it our internal decision-making model, or is it specific to the RFP? For the RFP, we have internal reviewers that are going to be reviewing the applications. But I think this question is a little bit different.
Yeah, Andrea, they've confirmed that it's the internal model that they're asking about.
So how are decisions made at First 5LA? Gala, do you want to take a stab at that question?
Well, I mean, it depends, I guess, on the decision, but are they talking about specifically to this or all decision? I'm not understanding the question.
The question was asked by Rio. Rio, if you can clarify that question.
In the meantime, yeah, let's move on to the next while we get some clarification.
To do the assessment, will the contractor have access to staff, e.g. for individual or group interviews and or questionnaires, and to needed documents?
I would say probably yes.
We have another question around data, and I believe that was addressed, that we have limited data available around the work that we've already done. The next question is, will the diversity of the firm or individual be a consideration in the review process?
So in terms of level 2 review, diversity is not part of the criteria in scoring the applications. For the interview, I would say generally working with different RFPs across the board, it's about technical expertise, fit, communication. So I can't answer that question in terms of the interview round, because the interview tool or review tool is not, it's not been created, in fact. But unfortunately, we don't have an answer to that question on this call. But for the level 2 review, the criteria that's stated in the review tool is what we will use to move forward applications.
Great, thank you. A question from Misha: should proposers estimate budget for 12 months or 24 months?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say for short term and long term, yes, for the entire 2-year term.
And a question is there data on YOY kindergarten enrollment that can be attributed to First 5LA's initiatives? That question's from Pamela.
I think we'll probably have to get back to you. We would have to check. Do you know, Andrea?
I don't. I don't know what YOY stands for, and I apologize if that's an obvious acronym that I'm not familiar with.
All right. We did get some follow-up from Rio in regards to the question. The original question was, what is the current decision-making model for First 5 LA? Rio's response was in regards to the internal model and in regards to how the consultant will be impacting the DEI process. To clarify on the decision-making process question, basically, given that the scope of work includes helping revise internal policies, I was wondering how decision-making happens in being able to see some of the changes being made towards the DEI goals identified through the consultant strategy.
I see. Bella, I'll give this one to you. I think I have an answer, but I'm not quite sure. But I want you to try to stab at this, take a stab at this one.
Bob?
Sorry, I was on mute there. I think what we would like to do is just follow up with you so that we can get back and really take a look at your question and make sure that we're answering it correctly.
Yeah, I will. Based on the design of the RFP and the questions, I think we're really looking to the consultant to guide us through through how we approach even decision making. And maybe I'm stepping out of turn there. And I think communication is actually a big part of the application. And in asking, like, how do you prefer to work with your clients, to work with First 5? And I think we want to hear from you on what the communication lines look like and what you think you need to be successful in working with us in terms of decision making, in terms of communications and implementation.
We got some clarification from Pamela. YOY means year over year, so I'm going to restate the question. Is there data on year over year kindergarten enrollment that can be attributed to First 5 LA's initiatives?
Oh, I don't think either of us have the expertise knowledge on that, but we will do our best to follow up on those data questions.
The next question is in regards to the RFP. The RFP mentions one deliverable being the development of a training strategy. Does that include execution and implementation of any training or just the strategy?
Good question. So that includes development of the strategy and execution and implementation. The language is included there if we do want to use the consultant as the implementer of the strategy. So it can be both development and implementation, but we are expecting that the consultant that we bring on help us implement the strategies that are proposed.
Thank you. The next question is the review tool accessible in the document so we understand the measurements? And I'm guessing that question is ahead of the actual submission of the RFP.
So we provide a copy of the level 2 review tool, and that's posted on our website.
Next question is, will you be sending follow-up responses to everyone or only to the person who asked?
No, so we will take note of all of the questions on the chat, and whoever is participating on this webinar, we will share out responses to all of the questions to all participants. And we're going to do our best to get it posted before June 30th, because that is still a bit of ways away. So we want to try to be responsive to the questions on this call since you did attend.
Next question is, will teaming be acceptable?
Can you explain a little bit more about teaming, or maybe Gala, Bob, you know what that term means?
No, can you please explain?
I wonder if the question is two firms. Good question. Let me get back to you on that. I think I have an answer, and but I just want to be clear before I answer it. I can try to get an answer on that one before by early next week, or if not by the end of this week. Good question though. So I think the question is, can two firms co-apply to the application?
I believe we're caught up on questions. I'm just asking if there are any more. It looks like our next question has come in. Teaming has never been an issue before. Is there any reason it might be an issue here?
It's not that it's an inherent issue. I just want to be, I just want to confirm that we are willing to and open to two firms teaming up. So not necessarily that it's an issue. I just want to confirm on my end before I give you a final answer.
Next question is, how many people are being trained?
I'm sorry, how many people are being trained?
I believe this question may be referring to the staff, the staff size, perhaps.
Oh,
clarify. Yeah, staff size.
well, we currently have 118 staff. On the implicit bias training, all staff attended that, and all managers and above attend the management center training.
It looks like we are caught up on questions. If there are any additional questions, if you can please post them to the chat. Next question is, what is your overall training budget at present per year?
It really depends. What training we decide to do. I cannot. I don't remember our exact training budget for this year, but it does vary year to year.
The next question is, what is the overall agency budget, or is there a link to our financial statements available?
That is a good question. Our board is actually approving our annual budget at its next board meeting on July 9th. I believe that it went for information yesterday. I can provide, this information is available to the public because we are a public agency. So I can share a link to our draft budget, or to our 1920 budget in response to this question.
We have a few more questions. How similar to the Bryant Marks implicit bias work be in terms of scope? How long was it, and what was that budget range?
I can answer the budget range. I don't have the information for that, just off of the top of my head. We would have to verify at looking at the cost for what that work was. I do know I mean, I can't answer the scope question. I participated in the implicit bias workshop, but maybe I'll let Gala answer this question on the terms of the scope compared to Bryant Marks's implicit bias training to this.
That was just an implicit bias training, just, you know, a 2-day workshop for the organization, and it was 2 sessions, two-day sessions.
So it looks like we are caught up on questions. We did have a statement, a note of appreciation for the time.
Okay, so we can, we'll wrap it up here since we are approaching the end of the hour. I just want to say thank you to everybody. I mean, as a staff person, not just as a contracting officer on this, I'm super excited for this work. I'm so glad to see that there are so many participants on this call. And I think that the staff is really excited to start continuing this work. And so I'm looking forward, just as a staff person, to start this RFP. And I really hope that you consider applying. If you do have questions, please let me know. I'll work with Gala and Bob to get these to you in a timely manner. But again, thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate it. I know that this work is extremely important to our executive director, who has been asking us when this is being released. So I think I can speak for her that this is extremely is a big priority for the organization, and we're just looking forward to starting at least this RFP process with all of you. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for participating. And like Andrea said, we are all looking forward to continuing our DEI journey, and we're all very excited. So thank you for participating, and we encourage all of you to apply.